Good morning, CLC.
Good morning.
Good morning. Happy New Year. Happy New You. I invite you now to give yourself to love. Take a nice deep breath and invite love into your heart, into your spirit. And as you release that breath, release all that no longer serves you. Allow your body to just relax in this moment. Let go of anything that was going on last year, and let's welcome in the new year together with a fresh heart, a fresh mind, healing spirit. And if you feel so inclined, go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath. Releasing that breath and letting your body just relax in this moment. And allow your mind to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words. I surrender.
I surrender.
Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. I now center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. Visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept. Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release.
I release.
Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This can be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in the room with me this morning. I turn toward that image in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in the room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude and saying, I'm grateful for the good in your lives.
I want to thank you for being here today, those of you in the room. I want to thank you who are watching online. It's a solemn time for us. It's a sweet time for us. And it's a silly time for us always, you know. That's how a year works. That's how the 525,000 minutes, 600 minutes. Almost dropped 10 hours there. It's how it unfolds. This service is dedicated to the memory of Ruth Catalona, practitioner of this center, longtime member. She will be memorialized in a celebration of life at a date to be announced. Probably within the next 6 to 7 weeks will be the event, not the announcement. The announcement we hope to have by the end of this coming week. Please keep her partner of decades, Carthel, in her soulmate, her twin flame. These two were inseparable. Even the names, it was. If you saw Carthel's name without Ruth's name next to it, it was like out of the Philip Pullman books where the demon, the soul expression wasn't present, and vice versa. So please. Just know that our center is in mourning, especially those of us who worked so closely with Ruth, which, if you did anything here, you worked closely with Ruth. You know, like any activity that we had, you could think of, social service, fundraising, and so on. So I wanted to mention that, and Danielle, I'm sure, will say more, and so will David. Reverend Lisa's out of town. She had permission to be out of town. She told us last week she was going out of town. Others, however, have been calling and texting and emailing this morning saying that they're slightly under the weather. Now, it's New Year's Day, so we kind of know what that means. And I'm a sober person myself, sober and industrious person. 'Twas not always so. And I remember back in the 70s, I want to share a piece of advice for you, should you or any family member need this. Johnny Carson said, of all the hangover cures that he'd heard, the best one was strap your head to the exhaust fan outside a seafood restaurant. Good. So I just had to say that. Maybe you were watching football. It was quite a night for football last night. And now you've come here and you're wondering, where is he going with this? Well, it's really very simple. In January, we do the basic series of the Science of Mind. And I always say that at this time of year, it's the one time of year when I feel like I know what I'm talking about. The rest of the time, we take a few flyers and go off into kind of the wilds of metaphysics. But for here, this time, instead of going through the 4 introductory chapters in the Science of Mind textbook, as we customarily do, this year we're going to go through 5 steps of a process that will change your life, called spiritual mind treatment. I will take you through the first 4 of these steps, and on the 5th Sunday, the excellent Danielle Mercadal will treat you to the 5th. But today is about recognition. These steps are, and you can find them many places, and we're going to put up some information, more places now where you can find these steps listed in a little brief synopsis of each one. Recognition, unification, realization, thanksgiving, and release. These are 5 steps in a process that looks like, at first glance, prayer. It sort of is, but it's a different kind of prayer, and it's predicated on a different understanding of God. And that's what I bring you today, is the different understanding of God. Now, a few disclaimers as we get into this. Nobody's going to require that you do this kind of prayer that we're going to teach you. It's not meant to cross off the list all the other kinds of prayers you do. The prayers you were taught as a kid, the prayers from prior religious training, the prayers of your soul that you just made up. Do what works for you. What I think will happen is that you'll see that the prayers that you do that feel the most effective to you already conform to this model that we're going to share with you. I think you'll find that, and it'll be just more inside information about the dynamics of prayer, the technology of prayer, because in this teaching, prayer is not a hit or miss kind of thing. Now, I'm watching football yesterday, a couple of great games, and I didn't hear them use this expression, but you often do. They'll say the quarterback threw up a prayer. They even call, or threw a Hail Mary, threw a Hail Mary pass, wondering, no, this is like a real long shot that anybody's going to catch this ball and score a touchdown with it. And that's a lot of times what people bring to the idea of prayer is, I haven't a prayer, meaning it is the court of last appeal. It is the last house on the block. When all other options fail, then you go to prayer. And you know how that's likely to turn out. Because you probably have let down the side, you know. You probably feel like you haven't been a totally righteous person your whole life. And now here you are going to God in prayer. And I mean, fair is fair, right? If you had a friend that you ignored and you know, just blew off, and then you need something and you go to them, they'll say, well, where have you been the rest of the time? But that's not the kind of God that we teach in a place like this. It's not a personality that's likely to have its feelings hurt. It's likely to be wounded by your neglect, your busyness. No. It's a higher power. It's a higher power. We recognize the existence of a higher power, a greater power than we are, yet that is right where we are. One power, just one, and all things are constituent beings of that one power. All things are part of that one power. This is unlike any other power that we know, which is what makes it a little confusing, because it has properties that are infinite, which makes it impossible to describe. One infinite power everywhere present. We tend to define things by their relationship to other things, don't we? This thing that we're talking about has nothing else to compare it to. Why? Because it's infinite. All the people you know, we talked about this a couple of times last month, but all the people you know remind you on some level of somebody else. Everybody's sort of, connected generically. Every situation reminds you of somebody. If I say it's foggy this morning, as you're driving here, you think about your experience of fog. Is it greater or less than the fog I knew before? I heard the other day a cute saying they said, why is it that every time there's a hailstorm, they relate the size of hailstones to something else? Think about that a moment. Hailstones the size of golf balls, hailstones the size of grapefruits. They don't say hailstones the size of hailstones. Okay? Because it lacks the dramatic impact. So we're used to comparing for the purpose of explanation. Say, I have something new to teach you, and it's more like this than it isn't. So, okay, I kind of understand, Is it animal, mineral, or vegetable? What category does it fit into? None of this applies when you're talking about something that's infinite, because it's incomparable. It has nothing else outside of it. You know why? It wouldn't be infinite, would it? It would be a percentage of infinite. But the one life is just that, one life. On this earth, on every planet, in every dimension, beyond space and time, through what a black hole is, that has such a gravitational force that sucks in light and whatever it's sucking it into, whatever's on the other side of that, whatever was here before the Big Bang, whatever will be here after the big collapse, is all part of this one. What you're thinking about it right now is part of this one. What you're thinking about it right now, punctuated with thoughts of lunch, how foggy is it outside, when is he going to finish speaking, all of these things, right? All of these are contained within the one. An explanation of the one, or a commentary really on the one, that's kind of new to me, that I want to trot out for you this morning and see how it lands, is the monad. Have you ever heard of the monad? The monad is a metaphysical philosophical concept that tends to be credited to Giordano Bruno. Giordano Bruno, well worth looking up, was a Christian heretic. In his time and in that culture, you couldn't bring to the table an alternative idea and say, let's talk about this, and maybe this is a possibility. No, you were a heretic. You were a heretic if you brought in any kind of different idea. His idea was the monad. He may have gotten some of this from Pythagoras, and Leibniz took what Bruno had said and ran with it, and you can look up the philosophy of it, but the gist of it is this. The monad is a oneness. A monad is a Greek word that means unit, a unit. That there is one unitary wholeness. That all of life is a unit. And it's the principal unit. It is the beginning unit. It is, for example, in a series of numbers, the first and principal number on which all future numbers are built. What is the first principal number on which all numbers are built? 1. 1. 1 divided by itself is 1. 1 multiplied times itself is 1. Any way you cut it, it's 1. You can add 1 to 1 and get 2 and keep on going from there, and that works in the sense of how many apples Susie has and gives to Jimmy, as we learned in, kindergarten, okay? But in the sense of the overarching wholeness, there is no other 1 to add to the first one. Everything that comes subsequently is contained within that first 1. And you can't take the first one away and have zero, because zero just isn't possible. How do we know that? Well, experientially, for one thing, because here we are. You know, whatever you think about life, whatever opinion you have of life, you're having life. Whether you like life, don't like life, you have all kinds of complicated philosophies about it, or you look at it kind of simplistically, you realize that you have consciousness and you're having life. And so it's indisputable that there is life. There'll never be a zero. Unfortunately, we can feel like there is. We can feel like there is. We can feel like there's nothing ahead for me, and that's my life. My life has zero possibilities to it. Or it can look like I need another one to my life. I am this oneness and this wholeness, but I like U2 says, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And we can go off on this, right? I need more of this, more of that, and still in all, it's as the stuff that piles up, accumulates, it's still not enough. And these are problems of human psychology, spiritual psychology, and this is where we're going to go in the weeks to come as we apply this idea of the oneness. But the takeaway today is to realize that there is just one. All people are one. Now, I gotta split some hairs on that, because all people are one, but all people are not identical. Have you noticed that going forward? They don't all look alike, talk alike, walk alike. I'm channeling the Patty Duke Show theme right now. And they don't all have the same opinions. They don't all behave the same way. You know, so we'll say, well, then there's my people, and then there's these other people, and pretty soon we're trying to divide the one for various purposes of convenience or understanding, or out of pain or out of fear. But all people are contained within the one, and all people are elaborations on the one, on the first number. All people are one times something. Times something. The heroic people, the great people of history that you hold close to your heart, the people who are the great artists in the fields that you most enjoy, have taken their oneness and amplified it in some way. You and I have desires to do the same thing with our oneness, and yet it's all reducible to one. Often we look at the negative side of this, and we'll say, well, you know, terrible people who do terrible things, well, they're part of the human family too, and they are. But I encourage us to look the other direction at least as often, to the people who've done the great heroic things, and say, yeah, we have the same blood. We're part of the same family. Jesus the Christ walked this earth. In fact, the atoms that were on his skin are theoretically anyway on yours, because they don't go anywhere. They don't leave the atmosphere, you know. He breathed the same air. So whatever is desired to be possible, to manifest, comes out of this one and shows itself forth going forward. The trick is for us to remember it and not be thrown. Because there are a lot of people out there never heard this idea, that there's just one. And there are people out there who've heard the idea and they're not ready to accept it. And I say ready, and I know that sounds pandering, but the fact of the matter is it's true. Not because I say it, not because Ernest Holmes or Jesus the Christ or anyone else said it. It's true because it's true. It's logical. It's inevitable. And not everybody's willing to accept it yet. And so there's a lot of noise, a lot of static about where the real people are and where the real truth is and so on, and who's outside of it, and who ought to be outside of it, so we're going to, kick them out, or all of this. We have this coming at us constantly through all of our news feeds and things. So our job, my job, and your job is to keep the high watch for the oneness. Not to make it so, because it already is so, but to remember that it's so and invoke it, or more exactly, evoke it. Create an evocation whereby we call it up from the ground beneath our feet into our present consciousness. So when you read the news and you see what's going on in the world, a blessing to give that's more than just kind of a offhanded sort of a, good luck kind of thing, is to say there is one life, and that life is this life. That life is this life. That life is at the middle of this conflict. That life is at the middle of this struggle. That life is at the middle of this beauty and this wonder. There was an article in this morning's paper. I say paper, you know what I mean, thing. It's not anymore, above the fold and all that, but I haven't read it yet, this article. So why am I telling you about it? Just the headline. 25 reasons for hope in the new year. 25 reasons for hope. And it was talking economic, social, environmental situations. It wasn't like a horoscope, it wasn't personal to the reader, why you specifically, but why we as a community, as a human family, can have greater hope this year. The minute I get an undisturbed moment, I'm going to read this thing and see and embed it within myself. Say, well, that's part of the one life too. Everything is an expression of this one life, and it's up to us to recognize that there is one life. That's why when you hear the prayer that we do called spiritual mind treatment, and you're going to hear at the end, usually from Reverend Lisa, today Reverend David is going to give a spiritual mind treatment. I'm not going to, because I want you to hear, one, because we have different styles, and so I want you to hear one, and so it'll just simplify matters, moving forward. But when you hear a spiritual mind treatment done by anybody who knows how to do one, and you don't have to have a license to do them, it's not that, parochial, you'll hear the words something like to the effect of, there is one life. That life is God. That life is all the life there is. And that life is my life right now. There'll be, as I say, a variation on that depending on who's doing it, but that's the gist of the thing. And this is being said not to make it so, but to feel it so. Because it already is so. So who am I saying this to? Okay, last point I think for today, because it's New Year's and I've thrown a lot at you. We only treat ourselves. This thing called spiritual mind treatment, in the active voice of the verb, we treat. We'll say, well, I'll treat about that. Or we ask them, would you treat about this? Would you give a treatment or do a treatment? Sometimes we colloquialize it. We say, would you have a knowing? And the person will say, I'm having a knowing. And you're like, what? I said that to somebody who's completely unfamiliar with all of this one time. I said, well, I'll have a knowing about that. And they're like, what? Yeah. Sorry, it's shop talk, Yeah, so I'll have a knowing. I'll speak the word. I'll speak the word. We only are working in that word to convince the self. Nobody else. I don't sit there and there's one life, and that life is your life, and that life is... No, I work on convincing myself in that moment, to remind myself in that moment. If I say the words out loud in the presence of another person, it might bring comfort to that other person. That's not a bad thing, and it's not the point. The point is to convince the self that there is one life. Right now, in this moment, there is one life. I will remind myself of that one life, that one life, that one life. And in the second step that we'll get to next week, I identify myself or unify myself with that one life just as I am. Not the ideal me that I wish were so, but just as I am right now. I identify myself with that one life so as to have its power sort of fill me up. Or as Ernest Holmes, our founder, said, to have an ability to embody. Have an ability to embody. So what I invite us all to do in the week to come is, in this year, from the word go, which is our theme, the graphic theme for the month you see on the website and everything, could just as well have called it, might call it next year, hit the floor running. Hit the floor running, okay? In this new year. Spiritually, I mean, to hit the floor running. This is a year, you want your dreams to come true? You want great good to come into your life? You want your problems to pick up and leave? You want to feel better about yourself? There's a way that can happen. I can't tell you exactly how it's going to roll out, and life is complicated, and there are twists and turns in the road. What I can tell you is that no one, I believe, in history has ever had a negative experience from positive prayer. Nobody I've met, I've been doing them a really long time now, and it's, at the very least, it's done some good. And at the very greatest, it has healed and restored and uplifted people out of situations that looked hopeless. But there is hope. There is hope. There are 25 reasons. No, there are 525,600 reasons to hope, okay, as we go forward this year. So I know for you, I'm having a knowing, or we could say I'm knowing a having. I'm doing a knowing of a having for you of an absolutely magical new year. And thank you so much for your kind attention.
A few announcements. I know Jesse already talked about it, but with that, I just want to let everybody know that on Thursday, December 29th, our beloved Ruth Catalona transitioned from this world. She was a rock. She was a mother, a godmother, a grandmother. She was a force to be reckoned with and a spirit that lit this world on fire. And we love her. We will miss her dearly. And we know that her presence will always be here. She touched just about every single thing that we have and we do here. If you are involved in any activity here, if Ruth didn't start it, Ruth was a major part of it at one time or another. I can guarantee you that. There's nothing that this place does or has done that Ruth did not touch. And so with that, we are so deeply grateful for her spirit, for her love, for everything she shared with us and through us. We pray and treat for Carthel and for the rest of her family and for all the people that loved and cared for her. She will be dearly missed, and she will never be forgotten. And as our ushers make their way to the back, our precious, beautiful ushers that we love and appreciate, I would like to thank each and every one of you for your presence, for your love, for your monetary donations, for everything you are and everything you do for this center. It's because of who you are that we're able to be here and do what we do. So thank you so much for that. And I invite you now to say with me, divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
And that would be the key to everything, Jesse. You've got to really be able to pronounce it more like the Scots. It's a brabrich moonlich nicht the new. And that was Robbie Berens. You know, this day, it's kind of a mixture of sadness because we lost Ruth. It's also a day of rejoicing because we look forward to a new year. And the treatment that follows, it will be for Ruth and her family, but it will also be for each and every one of you, because we're all connected, we're all one. As Jesse said, Our spiritual mind treatments are split into 5 different parts, and you'll hear those clearly when I go through it. But first of all, I got some announcements, actually. Otherwise, Danielle will beat me up. But, what I want to do right at the beginning is this. Some of you watch online occasionally. You're in the room today. You know behind the scenes there's a lot going on. So when Jesse mentions facts, somebody here who's actually in blue today, sat on the front row here, gets into the computer, and then she researches online, and she puts the links in there. So she's working the whole time that you're actually here with the service. Danielle's doing 2 things. Today she's doing 3. She's actually operating the iPad as well. I offered to do it, but she threw me out.
With love.
With love. So just remember that. There's a lot of stuff goes on behind the scenes here at Creative Life, and we just want to appreciate everybody who does things that you don't see, all of our practitioners who do work behind the scenes. And talking about practitioners, we have 2 today. We have Jim Cantor. He will be the practitioner of the day on site here. He will be in the room at the back there. It's known as the children's room. He will be in there. So if you want to experience first-hand spiritual mind treatment today, if you're in the room, you can go with Jim Cantor. If you're online, you can look at the number that's up there, ring the number, and then also our practitioner, Michael Levinson, who is in Albuquerque, he will be working with you there. So if you want to experience it firsthand, please start the new year with a great treatment, but don't crowd Jim out too much, Otherwise, we'll have to bail him out. The bookstore will be open, if I can get over there fast enough, after the service. We have copies of Science and Mind. Because of the pandemic, we ended up with a whole bunch of Science and Mind magazine copies. We want to keep supporting the magazine, so we actually continue to pay our subscription as a center. We have a whole lot of them over there. If you want free copies of past issues from December going back to probably at least 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that, you're welcome to them. I'll be over there and I'll get them for you. We have a lot of them, so please feel free to come and get them. And if you want to spend money over there while you're there, you are more than welcome to do that. So just bringing ourselves to center. Ernest Holmes said, and this is going on from what Jesse said this morning, that there is a power greater than you are, right where you are right now, and you can use it. And that's the core of our spiritual mind treatments. He also said that we're not people who live in fairyland. What he told us to do, there's lots of stuff going on in the world right now, as we all know. He didn't tell us to ignore it at all. What he said was to look at a discordant fact, something we don't like, in the face, and then we turn away from that discordant fact, and in our own minds, we treat for what we want to happen. And this today, I am treating for what I would like to happen, especially for our dear Ruth and her family and Carthel. So just know with me now that there is only this one life that flows in and through and as everything. It created the universe, it created the multiverse, the omniverse. It is everything that is, and it's itself in expression in each and every one of us. And I know that it's in me, it's in you, it's in every single person. And I claim that as it's in each and every one, so is it. It's in Carthel, it's in Ruth's family, it's in each and every one in this room, it's in each and every one on this planet. So I am knowing full well that because I am one with this, I can claim for each and every person the highest and the best going forward in this new year. I can claim peace, I can claim love, and I do it right now. I claim that this is the truth of each and every one. It's the truth of Carthel, it's the truth of Ruth's family, it's the truth of each and every one of you in this room, it's the truth in each and every one of you online, it's the truth of every single person in this planet. And I claim for each and every one that they begin to know who they are as expressions of this one source. And as we all know we are one with this one source, the world changes. And I claim that this world is changing for the better through each and every one of us, through our individual minds. And I claim that this is truth. And in deep, deep gratitude for all of this, I release my word into the divine law, and I claim that it's done, and so it is.
So it is.
Say it with me now. Something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose it.
I trust it.
I trust it.
I use it.
I use it.
And I love it.
And I love it.
So it is.
And so it is. Woohoo!